fun in terms of just talking about different things in terms of mental health from different perspectives. As I continue to do the podcast, you have fun with it. Please just like, subscribe. Hopefully, I get some traction, and then go from there. So last time I talked about facilitation and having a plan versus not having a plan, and I thought that was really a good session. I thought that that helped in terms of trying to give the perspective of how us facilitators sort of plan for a day. And even now, I think even if it's not really how people receive care, I want to have more of those discussions because I feel like there's a lot of things that go into, it is hot, into our care of patients. And I think there's things that I'm learning. And so for the first part, I'm going to go into something completely different, even though it's sort of the same perspective. It's form making. As I said, this podcast is the companion piece to my private practice I have. And one thing I've really come to appreciate are the little things that I didn't have to account for when I work for somebody else. And I still like the dream of working for myself. I think that's a worthwhile thing. I experienced it last year, sort of, kind of, when because I was here in his home doing all my work because of COVID. And I was sent home by my employer, who was very gracious to employ, and I work from home 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, and all I did was see clients, and that was it. And I didn't have personalities to deal with, and I didn't have any weirdness to deal with in interaction with people. It was just being here, and it almost gave me a feel, not exactly, of doing a private practice without actually doing a private practice. And that's part of the reason why I got even more interested in sort of creating it. But yeah, there's a lot of things you have to account for. Credentialing is a huge thing in terms of making sure you take insurances, knowing how to get insurances, which honestly for me took a while. I had to work with several people before I was credentialed and try several times. And it is a lot of form completion and terms and vernacular that honestly as a therapist, I never really understood and never was really told. And it's weird because even I went to a How to Build Your Own Private Practice training class, and ironically, I went to that class, pre-COVID. Like, I think everything shut down, at least here in Connecticut, March 16th, and then my training was March 8th, and even then, it was more based on like how you want to design your practice, how you want to push your practice, what's the messaging about your practice. But the bare bones structure of like credentialing, and even before credentialing, just getting limited liability insurance, so that for you as a provider is covered in case some patient says there's some sense of maltreatment. It was discussed, and not to shade that that training. I'm just saying that these things aren't usually discussed, and hopefully there's more discussion about it. And I think, and not hopefully, I know there's more discussion in Facebook groups that do a great job of not being necessarily like some type of mentor, but being a rough guide as the conversations continue on, from one point in the group where we're talking about like billing, another part about messaging, marketing, and so there's a lot of tools out there. But if you're brand spanking new, you don't really know those things. So appreciating the work is done in terms of building up some reputable, having forms that feel like a standardized form. Having people you can sort of trust in terms of doing their jobs. It really is a commitment, but it's weird. Like once you're in it, you really like being in it, and you see, and I have several colleagues, I think I count 1, 2, maybe technically 3 colleagues that do it successfully and don't have to work for anybody else. And don't mind, there's a huge truck in the background making noise. Early days in YouTube world. So yeah, it's of appreciation. And the reason I say that because last week I had to make a form, and I had to make a form because I have consent for a client that's underage, and it reminded me of like the first time I've even tried to do this. I'm looking for consent forms, looking for return to work forms, looking for forms for any little thing. And there's a lot of places that have those forms. From what I was told, Simple Practice has those forms. But as someone else just starting out, I didn't want to pay a monthly fee to an EHR, and that's another thing. An EHR, a health record, a database, a software system, in essence, that helps you to track and document your interactions health-wise with your patients. I didn't want to put money in for something that wasn't putting money back out, because there's a lot of costs associated with it. There's costs in terms of even credentialing, costs in terms of EHR that I just mentioned, costs in getting an office and you're not doing it out of your home. So if you have a home to do it out of, I have an apartment, so I couldn't do it out of here. And so you're trying to save costs any way you can. And so I found N-Treatment, which is a EHR that's free for the first 5 clients. And as someone that's just starting off, I don't even have 5 clients. And so I'm using that, but because I'm using that and not Simple Practice, I don't have the forms. So some EHR have all the forms, as I've been told by some of my colleagues. And if you don't, you kind of have to just create it yourself. And you have to find a way to sort of organize yourself. I've always been sort of resourceful. Ironically, my recent stint as a program director, I was so surprised when like my interns that reported to me were all using like books and pens and pads, and I'm like, I do it on my phone. Like right now, I'm recording this on my phone. Like I do so much on my phone that it's crazy. Like I try to just, I know how powerful these things are. I'm somewhat of a tech geek on the side, and so I just try to make it feel like I max out whatever this is. Although as we go along with this and I continue this, I definitely want to get a mic set up. I kind of have one that has good audio, but I might have to get something a little different. But back to it, forms. So even like little things like what to put on it, how does it look? Does it look presentable? Is it spaced right? The font, dumb things that honestly I would never think to put on there are all good in terms of presentation, because people are investing their time, their money that is not unlimited, that can easily go somewhere else, and they're trusting you to give a service. And I want that service to feel as premium as anywhere else. I don't want to feel like there's a huge drop off because you came to me versus going to insert your favorite outpatient clinic here. And so, and I know there's ways to do it in a savvier way. And that's where I came back to the phone in terms of like using apps like Keep, using, if you have an Android, I use the Notes app on my iPhone. I use Pages and Sheets to track stuff, to sort of track things like my spending, the amount of money I'm bringing in from the private practice, and things of that nature. So I can kind of keep track of it, because that's also something I have to think about, is keeping track of income. And so all those forms you have to make, I think, are a huge part of that. And that's something that every time I make a new one, I think about the old one. Even thinking about the expenses form, that was time consuming. Like, and, most people, maybe you're crafty on Excel and you have like an awesome sheet. I'm not. I'm just a dude. Like, I no Excel skills at all. And in fact, my handy dandy Excel sheet that I use for work to track treatment plans actually comes from a colleague, and actually doesn't even come from my colleague. It comes from my colleague's wife, who I think is an accountant or something like that, and just knows how to make Excel sheets to track certain things. So forms are very important. Hold on. So yeah, so forms is a huge thing that I thought about as a private practice. Even talking to different people that might be interested in having service, and it's crazy because I've gotten more referrals even than I had, but it's just been some misconnections. But I'm glad that there is at least some type of exposure to the public, and people may be slowly bringing in traffic. And I plan to sort of use that momentum to sort of build it more, so it can be easier for a lot of people to access. Starting during COVID was different in a lot of ways, but I think from what I'm hearing, a lot of businesses started in COVID because we were all home, so like nothing to do. And so I feel like that's sort of par for the course. I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how these different models of businesses also develop and flourish underneath COVID, or from COVID actually. But because it's all COVID, it's all digital, which in some ways, kind of push you ahead of the curve. I feel like there's a lot of people that, and especially me, when I go to business, there's been some businesses that are so in older ways of sort of paying or giving service that, like starting this way was somewhat of an advantage. And also the fact that, I started this not really as a nonprofit, but as something that did community good. I didn't shy away from, my stance on certain issues, whether it be racism for Black people or LGBT rights or anything like that. And I actually that makes, it's kind of funny because that me in part starting, but not fully, but small part of starting this business was doing common good. In a sense that when I tried to contact people as just me, Omar Green, random dude, they didn't also respond because, like, I'm just a random dude. And so I thought, like, maybe if I have a private practice, I technically have a business, and people will have to like respect it more when I call or email, which I actually have, and do when working with other people in the community, on the Greater Harvard community where I'm from, and I don't live there right now. I'm gonna return in like about a month. I've been able to really do some cool partnerships, and so I think the future's bright in terms of that. But I do think that's something I'm going to talk about, with this form creation, building the structure of it, even finding like a place. Like I've started to look for places to lease or sublet physical space, even finding things that are walkable. It's so much like we've done a little nuance thing that also, it's not done, but it's so many tiny factors that lead to a place. So finding somewhere that's on a bus line, finding somewhere that has a sidewalk, finding places that have other businesses around it, finding other businesses that sort of go well with your business, which has also been interesting because I didn't know that. There's no handbook of like, this goes well with therapy. Like anyone can, benefit from therapy. I called everybody. I reached out to everybody to do that. And so building the structure of this is something that I always sort of think in the back of my head. Especially now that I'm working, which I wouldn't have it any other way. Even though sometimes it's overwhelming, I like being busy, and I'm at a point yet where my private practice is taking up all my time, and I have so much business coming in that I can kind of sidestep my job, even if I'm just like a activity level. And so having full-time jobs is awesome. Working is awesome. I'm truly grateful for that. I'm grateful for my colleague that helped get me in the door. But I'm constantly taking calls for the practice and doing things for the practice as a way sort of to build it up. And it's a way to sort of focus my energy. And even this is a part of that. So it can be like a resource of just different topics to sort of kind of expand or give answers to maybe people I haven't talked to, haven't got a chance to talk to, maybe just need a therapist to say, this is this or this is that. And so from that perspective, I think it's been good. It's been good, but it's been work as well to sort of make these different forms, build a structure in so many different ways administratively, even getting like a code of conduct packet, which I don't have yet. It's just a little thing that sort of builds toward that. And it's crazy because, as I said before, there's no real guide, or not easy guide that I saw to open private practice. A lot of people give you the steps to do this, but all the steps are sort of out of order. There's no like good sequencing to when you need to actually do one thing or another thing. There's even a little bit of confusion. But I've sort of stumbled and sort of found a way into it decent, the beginning so far. And so I'm going to continue to do that in those different forms. But I do think it's interesting, even just presentation, font, spacing, just every little factor that goes into making something ready for someone to sort of latch on to. And also even how you get the word out, because that's something else I think maybe I can talk about this time, is how I'm getting the word out. because I'm doing a few things. I'm using Psychology Today. I have a Facebook page. I have a few other things I can interact with. But getting the word out is a feat in itself. So that's the first part of this podcast. I'll see you on the other side of the card. Peace. Hey, welcome to the other side of the card. So, first part of the episode, we talked about basically me making everything I'm doing right now, and I'll continue to update everybody about that. I think that it's a great way to sort of talk about the ins and outs of it, and I'm continually learning it. I'm actually in the process of getting my limited liability insurance redone, which will be fun, and doing other things. Just a time check. To continue my practice. So I think it's gonna be a great journey, and I'll bring everyone around there as I continue to do it. So to actual therapy, one thing that I think came up, and it's ironic, like a few things sort of happened recently as I'm actually developing this practice. I thought about different modalities and how to do different things. It'd be interesting for patients in terms of things they don't usually do when they go to a therapist or your local mental health authority. And one thing that came up that I kind of thought about because of my years of experience was combining improv comedy with therapy. And let me explain. So, tiny person share, I had anxiety years ago, and without going too deep into that, I read some stuff that said try improv class, and it was really, really good. I got a chance to just jump in the scenes, I got a chance just to act on my feet, and I got a chance to really be a part of a dialogue consistently and continually, and honestly practice it and take those skills and practice it in the real world where I was able to do better with people and build, good relationships. And even the community itself, of improv was an awesome community, and actually one I look forward to when I move in about a month. And so it was a really good time. And so it wasn't an official way of doing sort of therapy, but I just kept seeing the connections in a common sense way from being able to be sort of in vivo or in person practice of situations that might cause stress or fear, and then being able to sort of live time workshop it. Because when it comes to making friends, when it comes to overcoming social anxiety, or even anxiety that may not be to a diagnosis of social anxiety, but it's still close to it, has different aspects of it, it's difficult because you can practice trying to establish a new relationship with somebody, but they're not gonna let you practice on them. Like most people aren't aware that you're trying to figure stuff out. Most people are not, they're living their own lives and they want sort of satisfying human interactions. Most people want some type of communication that leads somewhere. Most people who actually have, social skills and a lack of social anxiety aren't trying to get better at communicating. They're trying to use communication as a tool to do something, to establish relationships and to attain goals. And so trying to practice in real life, it's not useless, but the challenge of it is that the idea of practice is one-sided, and that can lead to challenges in trying to learn how to overcome anxiety, at least for that aspect of stress. And improv comedy gave a workshop for me and other people who I sent there to sort of work through those different challenges by literally freezing situations more exaggerated in comedic situations, honestly. And taking those situations and then trying to figure out how to make a scene work, how to have existing dialogue, how to stay on topic, how to go more in depth on an issue, so many different skills, how to basically take an issue and run it to its finality and conclusion in conversation. So many things that were just useful. And if I was to sum it up in a nutshell, I think one of my patients said it best: it forces you not to think about communication. I think when it comes to the anxiety related to communicating at times, the biggest thing is people overthinking, and not overthinking in a way that bad things can happen, and not blindly being confident. I think having some skill and the ability to obtain goals or practice that skill is the confidence. So I don't think confidence comes from nothing. I think that it comes from being able to do something or feel like you can do something. And so, but not overthinking and trying to do something spectacular. A lot of conversations, successful conversations I've had, start out really mundane, sometimes a touch awkward, and they get to a good space. And so, people I've sent there have said it's helped out a lot, said that they continue to be a part of that community. And so as someone that was coming over private practice, I wanted to do that because, when I think of stuff I've talked about recently, about making new friends, and breaking that barrier. Talk about being neighborly and being a community and talking to people around you. So therefore, at least people are aware of your values, even if they don't share your values, and they can kind of go from there in terms of trying to be an assistance to make a world, or at least your living space, a peaceful space for you. I talk to people about handling conflicts and being able to empathize with people and hearing people and understand where they're going with it in terms of their thought pattern. So it's been super helpful. And so I didn't know if it existed. I actually talked to the improv comedy studio that I used to go to about it, and sort of so on it. And I kept doing some research. And I actually ran into or found on the internet this studio, this private practice called, I think it's Comedy is Therapy. And I met the owner. We started talking about how she runs her practice, and it actually is really amazing. She uses ACT, which is like acceptance and commitment therapy, and she uses that essentially sort of in narrative therapy, where you're like, instead of you're dancing around the trauma, with some people, depending on who you are as a therapist, would actually suggest. Some therapists suggest, whether it's a trauma or conflict or issues of stress, to dance around it, to not be as, full frontal in terms of like going toward it, because that might trigger stress, because we're talking about something that's really harmful. And then people feeling bad, and they're going to develop sort of negative symptoms, whether it be just do something, whether it's feeling depressed, feeling down, which I can totally get. Like people have been there, I've been there, where like you mentioned something bad, and now your day's shot. You don't want to do anything. You have plans, you're not doing them, and so there is some truth to pushing things down in terms of trying to enjoy your day and enjoy the time. So there's some truth, but I think that honestly, those things eventually are unavoidable. Stress happens, bad things happen. That's life. Like, there are challenges in life. And so, beyond the challenges, beyond the stress, we have to continue living. Life just keeps going. And it's a way to sort of make the best of life while dealing with stress and doing things to overcome stress, so therefore they don't compound. And being able to sort of see a situation, handle it quickly, overcome it. So therefore it's no longer something that continues to stress you or something that continues to get worse. Or even just reimagining the stress. That's the other, side of trauma work, in terms of how the other side would say that you have to sort of reimagine it in terms of what happened slightly, and B, what did it mean to you? So instead of something being demoralizing and being really bad, it can be something that challenged you and proved that you were resilient to get through it, or something that taught you some type of life lesson that you use till this day. And so there's different schools of thought in terms of how to actually attack trauma or attack stress. And coming back to the comedy therapy thing, in terms of improv comedy, they use ACT, which is along the latter side. They go to the stress, they go to negative occurrences in life, they replay, reimagine scenes in life, and then they use improv comedy skills to actually reimagine it. And for those people out there, there's some footage of like narrative therapy where someone will tell a patient just to say the same story of trauma over and over and over again. And in that story, the patient, I guess, eventually from fatigue doesn't feel as bad about telling the story after a number of times. It's sort of like that, but then it's sort of building on that by recreating it and talking about alternative endings, how things could have been different. Talking about certain things of empowerment in terms of how you think about it, how you felt about it, talking about what it means for the future. All those things sort of ironically connect right back to the thing we just mentioned with improv comedy. And there are ways that not only we get through our stress, but the way that we sort of build relationships. Because when you're building a relationship, you're finding someone that has common goals, common likes, preferences, someone that's compatible in terms of respecting who you are, in terms of, I use the word boundaries, but you can say preferences in life, and someone that really can appreciate who you are, and you can appreciate them through actions and words. So I think that might be something exciting, and I'll keep you guys updated as it comes, because I think in terms of people reaching out to people, especially, I'm making this in 2021, COVID is not over, sadly enough, but hopefully it's over soon. People some people may feel a little weird about actually reaching out and talking to people new. I felt weird at times. Like a year ago, in the middle of COVID, I had these neighbors who were perfectly fine, and they would play music and have food, and I'm like, but it's COVID. We're not supposed to talk to anybody right now. And so as this is ending, I think coming back to being neighborly, coming back to hearing other people out, coming back just to checking in. Like just checking in just to check in, saying hi just to say hi, and building relationships organically from there. I know yesterday I just popped in on someone's group chat or someone's comment, and we were chatting back and forth. Those organic conversations, I think, help people understand us, because it can be very confusing, and a lot of people make assumptions about how people were raised or the morals or the values, and that confusion sometimes leads to conflict. And one thing I think I want to do is to sort of promote sort of more empathy, even when the other side is not seen as moral or kind and they're seen as brutal. I think there's a story to tell from everyone's perspective. And I think that, part of that is, hearing a person out, sharing skills, and that's when you hear someone out, you hear what they're good at. You can tell them your life and what has taught you, and vice versa, and using each other, and it's weird because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm making a podcast right now, and one of the podcasts I listen to, I think it's called Guess the Thing Is, it's the Joe Budden podcast with the two females, well, it used to be three females, now it's two. And he talked about how they would feel bad if they learned their friend was doing a business and they didn't ask them whatever talent they have to be part of that business. And and there's there's points to be made on both sides of the issue, in terms of maybe you just didn't think about it. It could be innocent as that, like I just didn't think about it. But if you can, use your friends and families and everything you do. And I'm making my own private practice now, and I'm leaning on colleagues I've known from years ago. I'm leaning on some of my family members. In fact, if I get a physical office instead of here, I already want to use one of my family's builders. It gives excuses to bring people back into your life. Find every excuse to put someone in your life. Having lunch with them, walking with them, mutually use each other to be a part of somebody else's life and make them a part of your plan. And then from there, you build bonds. As you build memories, experiences, you learn together, and you build and you grow together. So that's about 17 minutes. I'm counting. I'm learning some podcasting, especially on video. So thank you again. I'll see you on the other side of the card for the final segment. Thank you. So we're on our last session, or our last section of this show today, and we're going to continue to talk about rhythm practice. I thought about doing some other things in terms of talking about it, but honestly, I think right now it's been on my mind for so long that I don't know, it's just something I want to talk about. So, recently I've been learning how to make forms. I've been talking about making, partnerships with different people and building things in the community. And last week we talked a lot about sort of doing stuff with improv comedy to sort of broaden the horizons of what is there. And I think the more I've learned about things, I think as I said before, I've learned to really appreciate the different parts of it, because there's so many different aspects in terms of form creation, somebody else's craft, that you really appreciate how many little things go into just sitting down with somebody as I'm doing right now, and talking to someone. And you appreciate the time and effort. And so one thing I've been doing more is billing. And that's been quite, well, I'm not going to say interesting in a bad way. It's just been a learning experience. Um, it's weird. I want to say I never billed, but that would be somewhat of not truth. I never knew I was billing, but most people that work in EHRs or work for some type of LMHA or some hospital essentially are kind of billing. So when you are in a classic EHR and right before you sign your note, you sort of plug in whatever code. That's like a tiny part of the billing process. Like if you were to do a way more elaborate version of that, essentially you would be billing. And I learned that like over the past couple of years as I've sort of slowly but surely start to set this practice up more and more and more. Actually, ironically, I went to a lot last year during quarantine. I was here, right here, in the famous kitchen, and I was between one of my colleagues and the people from Medicaid, and they're telling me how to do it. And then I even got a little cheat sheet from my colleague on how to do it. And even from that, and even like pre-authorization, it's stuff that I did in a previous job. Where you had to basically talk to the main company that authorized stuff here for Medicaid or pre-authorization or prior authorization of why this person deserves treatment. And so it's not completely like new, but it has been new-ish in the sense that I'm doing it with different insurances. And honestly, sometimes these new insurances are different, and I don't know if I'm doing everything right. I was recently on a call, someone from customer service. They said I was doing everything right, but some of the claims didn't get fulfilled, and so there's some question in my mind. And then I'm the cop guy that just like, Mr. Fix It. Like as soon as I know a problem, I just obsess a little until it's done. And it's not that I can't put it down or I can't come back to it because I did. But I'm gonna lie, it's a little difficult. I'd rather just get it done and over with, know it's done and over with, and just relax. But that ironically is a skill of pushing away. And when I did, when I had to deal with that, I took a walk, I took some time to myself. I did a lot of breathing exercises to push out a lot of the frustration, a lot of the thoughts that were toxic, because as much as I teach this stuff or practice this stuff as a therapist, I'm a human being too. So I get to those toxic places, I get to those places that are not great, yeah, I got there this past weekend. There's a lot of cuss words, there was a lot of angry tones, there was a lot of judgmental talk, a lot of the things that were just frustrating to me, and I'm just like, okay, I to keep it going and keep me level-headed, because a part of this is me building relationships with people. And as I said, and one thing I kind of noticed a year ago, no matter how successful I've been in the start, is that at the end of the day, I'm just a guy, and I don't have any special relationships with anybody. I don't have anything that makes me just can randomly do that. And so part of it is just being nice and having good tact and manners. And I can bring all of that into it. And so I go for my walk, and I do one of my more peaceful walks before I was able to meet up with someone, and it helped, you know. And I breathed things out, and I didn't mention it, and I feel like that's something I thought about this whole weekend in terms of trauma treatment, and there's arguments for and against what I did in terms of how I handled it. What I did, and to be clear, what I went through was not traumatizing at all. It was more just annoying. But there is a school of thought in terms of you should not mention things to avoid triggering the trauma versus you should mention things to trigger the trauma, relive it, and reframe it in a way where it's seen less of a harm and more of a good, or at the very least, you're able to sort of process through what happened. And I've been on the side of both. You know, like it depends on how bad the reliving is. Some people are destabilized. I know, like for me, I saw almost no positive on reliving it, relitigating it, bringing it back up, saying it to anybody else. So I kept it to myself, and I just said, you know what? I'll push it out, push it away. I'll revisit it when it's time to revisit it, and yeah, I'll go like that. For some people, where the reaction isn't going to be as bad, but it can sustain it, it's worthwhile doing it. It's worthwhile kind of reliving the situation because you see other alternative perspectives of the situation and you get to process the meaning of those things. And actually, ironically, in the last segment when I was talking about improv comedy and how to actually just combine that with therapy, that's sort of the underpinning. Is they have a sort of a modality to go by, which is like acceptance, commitment therapy, where it's really just running right into traumatic moments, right into hard moments, and just saying, we're going to relive that. And we're going to pick out little scenes here and here, and we're going to just replay that over and over again. And we're going to replay it. What if it went this way? What if it went that way? What if it went that way? And essentially, that's your scene, which would make the improv comedy scene go. That would be like sort of the basis for it. And you know, there's a lot of that already, like narrative therapy, even ironically, the art therapy, the type of traumatic modality that I'm trained in, but I have never used because it's so whimsical that like I don't think anyone would take me seriously if I actually used that. So yeah, I just never used it. But yeah, for me this weekend, it just didn't make sense to redo that. And so I didn't, and I just moved forward. But it is tricky, and you know, and I think there's so many tricky things about it. One thing I can even think about it is that our hours are the same. You know, right now I still work my full time. I do my private practice on the side. It's on YouTube, way on the side, and it's tricky when you have to talk to all these people during your workday. I mean, during your workday, you're already sort of in that mindset of doing work, and you want to make sure that the thing that brings your living home is the primary, and you get that done to the highest of expectations. And it's hard at times, you know. Like even doing these videos, like I do them around my work shift. I usually film like an hour or so right before I head out the door. In fact, I've been challenged myself as a YouTuber to, in the future, film these things more quickly, all in one go, so I can just sort of film, have it all in one can, edit it, and you guys. Um, but as stated, it's difficult, and so today I'm gonna have some calls I have to make, and I'm not gonna have the time nor the resources to do that. And I think that's ironically the frustration when you deal with some partners is that they can't contextualize everything that you contextualize, and so and it kind of you have an understanding of one thing that's a barrier. They have, I don't say no understanding, a very limited understanding of things that's a barrier, and yeah, they just can't understand. They can't understand why you can't get to where they are because they can't understand the thing that's in front of you to stop you. And so we're just sort of in this weird in between space. So hopefully I can get through that today on some of these phone calls I'm gonna make. But it's I don't know, it's been still, fun sort of figuring it out and making things. I have 2 new sessions to come on this week. That's gonna be kind of cool to do that. And so yeah, I think it'll be fruitful today. But it is still a learning experience, billing, going through different insurances, websites, which are, I guess, I don't want to put too much on it because I guess I get paid, but it could be more intuitive. It could be a little more to it. Like, it's not like an iPhone app where it's like simple, easy, you just plug it in and it goes. It's kind of cryptic. You kind of have to wade through a couple menus that are not most intuitive, and that's why I'm calling my customer service all the time. Like, well, where did I go? Where did I go? Where did I go? And not everyone has these sort of companion services that are, I guess, meant to make the process easier, but I think in some ways make it harder because you'll have your companion service is supposed to simplify the process, but then you still have to go to like 2 other services to complete it. Like, so I was on a customer service call with one of the people in this whole billing thing. Like, I process my claim in one space, but then I go to maybe 1 or 2 other spaces to set up my payment account so that the money comes home to me. And I'm kind of like, why not just put it all in one space? So the frustrations, not frustrations, the annoyances continue. But I think, over time, this will be something I'll get. I can look back at this and hopefully laugh and just say like, wow, that you used to not know anything about that, and now you know a good amount about that. But as I continue to sort of build this practice and build this channel, hope that I can bring conversation from different aspects of it. I think I like these conversations because I don't want this to be a channel that's based on the patient by itself. I want it to be more of a all-worldly, I guess, perspective in terms of just all-inclusive things that not just involve treating the patients, which there still will be times for. Of course, it's a therapy channel, so there's going to be times for that. But things that involve treating colleagues, the difficulties practitioners have to deal with, the realities of administrations, the changes that come with certain policies. I hope all of that, gets handled, or we can discuss that in this channel. I think, as I said sort of previously, and I'll keep saying it again, communication breakdowns, I think, are the hugest thing that leads to frustration, that leads to conflict between 2 parties, one way or another. And if from this channel, you guys can either get some skills to how to cope in distress, but also maybe understand why you're a therapist or why your medical office can't do a certain thing and understand the barriers to deal with, so therefore we can help work with them. I think that's going to be a huge benefit. So glad I finished the video, even with a little behind the scenes. My cell phone holder, which I use for my camera, totally broke in the middle of this, but I MacGyvered my short tripod onto my long tripod, and now I have a new like Frankenstein tripod that I'll see if I can take a picture of. But yeah, until next time, breathe easy, and I'll see you guys soon.